It's like a NASA countdown, but it doesn't go off at all.
Right.
But are we live?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Oh
Yeah, and you
man,
can see
okay.
everybody in the little chat.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Hi
Hi
everyone.
everyone. So we've been talking a lot about creativity in past few days. And I know some of you have been talking with us, sending us a few questions, so we decided to come together and have a chat about it and see where this takes us. Uh, for those of you who know us, you know we're kind of chaotic, so we'll just let things flow. But we do have questions to answer, and I think we can start off just by uh, introducing ourselves, I guess, and why we have this idea of doing this. So why don't you start, Andy?
Okay, my name is A.R. Witham. The book is The Legend of Blackjack. And the reason that we're talking about this is because I had seen a lot of commentary on Discord about people who were kind of pining after the idea of being able to, hey, what does it take to get my creative going? What does it take to finish a book? And kind of all those questions that you hear again. I did a little video about getting over the perfectionist aspect and trying to stop that from happening by ruining it before you start, which gives you the freedom to do things more easily. So that's part of the reason that we're talking about it. And then, these two guys are a lot of fun to talk to. So that's why it's with them.
And this
Jim.
is Andy's
Yeah.
channel, but I don't know, I hijacked it to kick things off. So Jim,
It's a community.
what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not too dissimilar to what Andy was saying. I mean, really, I get often get people messaging me privately and asking, oh, how did you do this, or where did you get your ideas, or I really want to do what you're doing, but I don't even know how. And, I try to point them in the right direction. I give them some general advice, but, you know, it's very hard to hold someone's hand because there's just so much to say. But it really does boil down to a few key things. But, it's always fun to be available to answer specific questions when I can. So.
And how about you,
Awesome.
Thiago?
Well, me, man, I can't get my sides right. I'm the author of A Touch of Light down here. Uh, and yeah, I think it's pretty similar to you guys. I'm just always every time someone someone talks about writing, it's just I feel the need to tell them you can do it. It isn't something that's alien or impossible to do, and I know it kind of feels that way if you've never tried it. But it's sorry, I have a toddler trying to throw my water in the floor. Uh, so yeah, it's really exciting to talk about, and I get really really into it every time someone asks, like you, Jim. So I'm just here
So I want to
to
start off with
discuss.
a question that's very similar to what just happened just now. So, Thiago, you've got a kid. And oh, by the way, you also have another kid, but the other
Yeah.
kid is like this big, right? And so you've got family responsibilities, you've got a job, you've got things coming at you, you got kids talking to you all the time. How do you find time to write? How is this possible? So, what's the answer for you there?
So I think this is an awesome question to start off because I think it's different for everyone. And I'd like to preface, this whole discussion with there are no silver bullets. People just try and look for something, and it's like, okay, I'm gonna follow this, and this is gonna work, and works for everyone, and this is the way. And oh, how did I never hear this before? That doesn't exist. Yeah. So so um, to me, it's a question of kind of splitting up your time and putting a timer on it. I realized actually quite recently that I get a lot more productive if I put a time cap on it, which is weird, right? If you tell yourself, I have 5 hours to write, so I'm going to be super productive. Um, it actually encourages me to procrastinate more because it's like that old, you know, story of, oh, you had homework to do and you leave it till the last moment because you had all night, so you went to do something else before. um and if you time your sessions, if you say, okay, I have like, I was exaggerating with 5 hours, normally you have like 20 minutes, I know. But let's say you can carve an hour in your day, right? And you tell yourself, okay, so I'm gonna write for maybe 30 to 40 minutes, and I'll leave, just 20 minutes to do whatever, to whatever else you want to do. Just leave it, uh, allocate that to those 20 minutes. Um, and once I started doing that, I got super productive because there was the timer running, and it was like, oh man, I have this time to write, so this is my writing time, nothing else. And then when you put something to do later, you get like, when you get those 20 minutes that you can do whatever. You can procrastinate, you can, I don't know, jump on Discord, or do whatever. uh you also have a timer for that, so it's not like, unlimited social media or whatever it is. um and that really helps keep me organized during the day, when I have kids running around, when I have other obligations. And of course, I just, I tend to write really late, so sometimes I just, really need the silence, and I write after midnight and just go into the small hours. So that's what worked for me. But I love to hear what you guys do, because everyone, I think, has a different uh, process.
Jim?
Yeah, so I also have a son in the family. My son is older. He is 9 right now. So I have an easier time when it comes to time management, when it comes to kids. He's at school all day. I actually work from home. So most of my day is work from home. And but when I first started writing, it wasn't like that. I started writing when my son was very young. At least started writing again when my son was very young. And for the younger years, nap time was king. Um, so when your son goes down, when your daughter goes down, whatever, for a nap, man, take advantage of that time. Unless you also need that nap time, then that's completely different. But the other thing I would do, I had very different strategies, and it's all about carving out those little slices of time. I had the privilege at one point, because my son was going to daycare at one point, and I would pick him up from daycare. I would get off work, and I would run to Barnes and Noble, the Barnes and Noble Starbucks cafe combination, or to the local library. And I would sit and write for 20 minutes between getting off work and picking up my son.
Yeah.
And I would do that almost every weekday. It was only 20 minutes, but that got me sometimes 300 words, sometimes 400, sometimes I got 1,000 words in, depending on how fast I started writing. And moving my stuff around, and just doing it. And then there were times where I decided, you know what, I'm just going to wake up super early and do it. And I tried all these different strategies. Towards the end of the 7th cadence, when I got towards the end of it, I was night writing, and I was like, I am just going to barrel through this real hard, and I did night writing. I actually don't like writing at night. My brain space doesn't work well as well. I am definitely more of a morning writer, but not everyone's that. If you write better at night, do that. Find the time that works better for you. If you have, a significant other, and you're trying to find the time, and you have kids and ever, you can say, hey, listen, I really need an hour. And I know you need an hour. So, hey, if you can give me an hour at this time and I'll give you an hour at this time, whatever works for you. And also make sure your family is on board. If you have a family, if that can be very difficult, because if your family doesn't really understand what you're trying to do and that you're serious about it, they won't make the space for you. And most families will make the space if they find out that you're very serious about accomplishing this goal. So that's what I have.
I'll keep mine short. I am lucky in that my wife, Gloria, falls asleep at 10 p.m. every night. So I have 4 hours to myself every single night because I go to bed at 2. So that doesn't mean that I write for the entirety of the 4 hours, but I have that time that's built into my life that I can use in whatever way I want. What I wanted to do with the rest of my part of this answer is answer Kayla's first question.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe you guys can jump in on it as well, which is, how do you manage a writing slump? And to me, we talked about deadlines, right? And I know like Zach Argyle got the second book done toot sweet because he set a deadline for when it was going to be released. That deadline eliminates your ability to have a writing slump or have writer's block, because it's not, writing is not an option. And I think that is an incredibly helpful tool, because all of us don't want to write sometimes. And for me, it's like, okay, everything I'm going to write today is going to be garbage because I don't feel like it, but I'm going to do it and get the garbage out. And I think that's one of the things that goes along with that perfectionism, is recognizing that sometimes you just need to vomit the junk out of you so you can find the good stuff in there and go, okay, this is what I'm keeping. And I think a lot of people don't put enough credence into writing because it's a process. And if you're just going to do 500 words, do 500 words. They can all suck. It's okay, but you did the job and you've got those muscles going. And I think that's the difference between someone who writes because they're enjoying themselves and someone who writes because they have a deadline and an objective, is that we don't have the luxury of letting our emotions get in the way of the work. Mm-hmm. So we'll go back around the horn to Thiago.
So yeah, I mean, I think that's spot on. Again, I think there are people who work well with deadlines. I think there are people who work well leaving the deadline a little. I'd say having a deadline that's a little more loose. I've tried both things, and I sometimes try to set daily goals for myself. And I find myself getting really, really stressed when I do that, because it's like, oh, it's already 2 p.m. and I haven't written all. It's because I set, goals that are greater than I can do normally. But if I do like half that goal, I've done, pretty well for the day. Sometimes I know I'll tell myself I'll write 4,000 words, and if I write 2, that's great. But it is kind of stressful. So I just say you need to find a balance with that. But it is important to have a deadline, to have something, a certain date you'd like to make. Otherwise, yeah, it can be, and I mean, it's fine if it's like, if it's something that you wanna take on leisurely and not just, oh, I need to have a deadline to finish this. But if you are serious about finishing something and publishing it, and I'm not even talking about just, writing, it can be anything.
Yep.
Yeah, then deadlines are really important. And the other thing I was gonna say is that it really doesn't matter what you're doing. A first draft of anything, it can be writing, it can be, drawing, painting, whatever, is I read this quote that said, the objective of a first draft is simply to exist. And I love that, because the first draft is simply the lump of clay, right? It's something you need to mold. If you don't have the words, you can't fix them. and they're all in your head, and they start to become overwhelming, and it starts to become really, really hard to just put everything on the page because there's too much just running around in your head. So once you have them on the page or on the screen, it becomes so much easier. And then, and it's going to be crap. It's going to be absolutely horrible, but you can't judge yourself. Otherwise, yeah.
It's gonna look like that. It's okay,
Yeah.
but it's done.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other thing is, no one will ever see your first draft. You don't have to show it to anyone but yourself. So,
Not even your spouse.
yeah,
Don't show them
no
your
one,
first draft.
no, don't.
My
And
wife didn't do it either.
even if you think it's awesome, just give it a couple of days and read it again and reassess. Because you'll probably it looks really great when it's in your head, but when you read it, afterwards you'll see that it's a first draft. It's normal. So I just say go for it. Don't judge yourself, and there will be a time to judge yourself. It's called editing, and
Yeah.
then you know that's when you fix things. So
Yeah. So I really think that with writing slumps, it's kind of good to identify what's actually happening, internally, when it comes to writing slumps. Are you having a writing slump because you're having a bad day? Are you having a writing slump because you're lost in the story and you don't know where you're going? Are you having a writing slump because, I mean, you feel like you've used every single word in the English language and you don't know how to write another sentence? I feel like all those things have different prescriptions, different cures. If you're having a bad day, you probably just need to sit down and write. You know what I mean? Like, and that sounds a little harsh sometimes, but a lot of times it's like, yeah, you're having a bad day, but I mean, this is the thing. Like, you should be happy to do this thing. And if you're not having fun, maybe you shouldn't be writing. But um, it's probably more fun to write than not write. So just sit down and try. Just sit down and do it. I set out when I'm in draft mode, I set aside, a certain amount of time every day. I don't have a word count goal. I don't do that. That's too stressful for me, a daily word count goal. Instead, I have a period of time that I write. And I just tell myself, okay, today, right now is my writing time. It's in my calendar. And I say, well, I can't do anything else. So I can either sit here in front of this document and look at it, or I can start typing. I only have two options. So I'm probably going to start typing because it's way more boring to sit there. And if I start sitting there too long, I'm going to start imagining something and then I'm going to start writing it. So you almost have no option to write.
did you know Neil Gaiman actually said exactly that in his masterclass?
Oh, really?
It's one of the ways he motivates himself to write. He says, I can write or I can do nothing at all. And
Right.
after a few moments of looking out the window, he just gets bored and he starts to write.
Yeah, yeah. So, I strategically place that time before everyone else gets up in the morning. So, and because that's my special time, just like Andy, he has that block of time, and I'm the earliest person to wake up in the morning by usually 2 hours. So it's very quiet in the house, and I can do whatever I want. Make a coffee. I have a ritual. I make a coffee. I do what I need to do in the restroom that will remain unmentionable. And I get started, So, having a ritual actually helps because it kind of gets your brain working into that setting mindset to start writing. And then the other thing, like if you don't know where you're going in the stories, sometimes maybe you need an outline, I outline a lot. I kind of have what I can't remember who's meant to use this term, but kind of a zero draft where my outline is very long. My outline for my next big book is it's oh goodness, it's about 50,000 words, and that's just the outline. So it's a zero draft, and that's already written. And now I just have to expand it. And if I already know what I have to write. Like I don't get stuck very easily. If I have it that well built out. So I've done all the hard work in my zero draft. So I just have to do the craft work of putting the sentences together. So yeah, what I mean is like there's different diagnoses for what you're going through, and you kind of need to know yourself and know what you're actually experiencing so that you can, fix it. So
I think that's really interesting because our processes, we talk all the time. They're really really similar. But we're both heavy outliners,
mhm.
and I just realized that I rambled and I didn't talk about the actual writing slump. But you hit the hammer, you hit the nail on the head with having a process, right? I kind of learned that with two small kids. You have to have a routine for them to sleep so that their body understands it's sleep time. We still work like that, it's ingrained in us. If we have a ritual, like, I don't know, listen to music for like 10 minutes and the same song, or and this is why my books aren't here, because they're taken away.
Well,
uh
read chapter 8.
yeah. So yeah, just having that, and do the same thing. Even if you're gonna do it the first time, you're not gonna feel motivated to write. Maybe it's fine. Do it every time, and your brain will understand that this is what you do right before you write, and then you'll have, you'll kind of train yourself to do that, and it'll become easier. I promise. And then the second thing that I was gonna say is I agree that you need to just identify what's going wrong. Most of the times that I get kind of stuck, I also do have an outline, but sometimes it just isn't working. Sometimes it, what you put in the outline, what once you're gonna actually write it, it's just not the same. It's not working. So stop, take a step back, and just reassess and see whatever what you can do with what you're writing, and try to understand why you don't know how to move forward. What's missing in the scene, and sometimes it's fundamentals. Sometimes I have actually stopped and gone back and said, okay, I don't know, it wasn't the dialogue, but let's just say the dialogue isn't working. So I stopped. I went and I read a book on dialogue, or I watched a video on dialogue and learned dialogue, and then I continued writing, and it was a lot easier from that point onwards. So yeah.
Yeah, I did something similar with the Seven Kingdoms. I wrote a few books while writing that book, like short things, like novellas. One was like a superhero 3-book series, or a 5-book novella series that I trunked because it was not that good. But I did it to teach myself a couple of different things that I wanted to fold back into the main project, and one of them was dialogue. I was and I it was so different that it didn't feel like it was cannibalizing the other project, but it was a very dialogue heavy project, and I thought, okay, this is making my dialogue a little more fluid and a little more fluid. So it was helpful to do it that way. So
I think that can actually segue. Andy, do you have any more comments on
No, I'm good.
the
Let's go
slump?
ahead and move on to the next question.
A lot of people asked, how do you start, right? Time's something that we've talked about. It's a factor. Everyone has their own way of organizing themselves, but how do you actually start writing or start a craft? So maybe you guys can share experiences of what did you do to feel comfortable to actually start putting words on a page and not feeling just like someone playing at it.
yeah, so I think I create things often fearlessly. And by fearlessly, I'm terrified. But what I really mean is that uh, I'm gonna make something. I just have to make things. I've done a lot of music um, in the past. I wrote a lot when I was in high school. And if I get bored, I have to make something. I have to create something. So when it comes to starting that the momentum of like saying, oh, I need to make something, that was easy to me. That was the easiest thing in the world. Even though, I knew that I wasn't good enough or whatever. But I think I stopped writing fiction after high school because I thought I wasn't qualified to tell a story. And by that, I thought, oh, when I've lived enough, when I've had enough experience, I can start. Oh, I haven't, joined the Peace Corps yet. I can't possibly write a novel. Like something crazy. Like there's always something that you can invent to hold you back from something like that. You just kind of have to sit down and do it. So when I started, I wrote a chapter and immediately recognized that this project was going to fail unless I stopped, and actually learned more about the craft. And not everybody will do that. Some people will just keep writing and not think that. But I'm the kind of person who likes to go in prepared. So I thought, when I first started writing a book, like, oh, I can do this. I mean, I've read a book. I can totally just do that same thing. And I started writing and I was like, oh no, this might actually be a little bit harder. So I stopped. I listened to a lot of writing podcasts, watched, like Brandon Sanderson's, free courses on his YouTube channel about writing. I learned one of the good things about coming into it a little bit later in life too is I realized that there's a way to learn something. Like if you break things down into smaller pieces and look at those smaller pieces and then learn each micro skill and then put it back together, you can learn things a lot faster than you think you can. And that's basically what's, you learn in school. They teach you very little skills so that you can put it together as an adult. Really, another thing I had to do was I just went back and started reading all the books that I really loved. And I read them. I was like, oh yeah, that was great. That was a good book. And then I read it again and started picking it apart. And then I read it again and picked it apart some more. Like, why does the scene work? Like what made me feel this way? Why did this why is this character so compelling to me? Like, what is this author doing to make the scene so exciting? How is this action scene working? Wait a second. Let me reread that and look at the mechanics and the structure. Like, oh, look at the white space. Oh, this is where he's doing his paragraph breaks. Why is he doing it that way? Why is he doing it this way here and not this way here? And start thinking about those things teaches you about the craft itself. You just have to start thinking in a deconstructive way.
Yeah, I agree with that. I cheated, Andy, because I know that Jim does the same thing that I do. So he's answering for me.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and move on to the next question.
No, you have to answer. Your part is on.
I honestly, I have been a professional writer all of my life. So I always come back to my feelings don't matter, right? If I want to start something, start it, and you just go. And it just understanding that it's going to be garbage right off the bat, get it out. Then you come back for the second round and either you fix that or you move on to something else. And you just keep throwing paint at the wall. You can't make something without that hubris and that pride and that arrogance that goes along with saying, I'm a storyteller and I've got something that's going to fascinate you and be really interesting to you. And this is what it is. And so just start hurling the paint at the wall. And it's not for anybody else. It's just for you. And just be okay with that. Be okay with, getting it wrong and just getting it up there. And then little by little, starting is all about starting to go up that hill. But once you get some momentum, you're going to have a hard time stopping yourself because you're going to want to tell the story. Oh, I didn't get to tell this. Oh, I haven't told this yet. Oh, I haven't got to this. Oh, wait until they get to, right? That's your own story will drive you on. And it's amazing how how quickly you can go from nothing to something that forces you to finish it. It's a very, very short amount of time from I have no idea to, yeah, this is everything.
Real quick, that actually made me think of something that was a very big motivator to keep writing was when I kind of know what things are going to happen in the story, or at least some key things. Like even if you don't outline, like if you know, like there's like, oh, there's these 3 scenes that have been in my head, like I could see it almost visually, like having those scenes like out there, like I wanted to write to get to write that scene sometimes, and having that motivation. And then when you get to that scene and you write it, and especially when it comes together the exact way you planned it, it feels so rewarding. And then you're like, oh yeah, but that's that other scene I need to write. And it gets so exciting to be able to write those scenes. So even before I start writing a book, I usually have 4, maybe 5 different scenes that I'm thinking in my head, like that's going to be so much fun to finally have it on paper. So
Yeah, that's awesome. I had a comment, but I forgot because I'm sleep deprived and have small babies. So I'll I'll maybe remember it sometime where it won't make sense to comment anymore. But so do you have another question you want to jump onto, Andy, or do you want me to
Sure.
move on?
Actually,
there are a lot of questions in the chat.
that's true. I think one of the ones that I thought was worth addressing was: have you struggled with doubt in your process, and if so, have you overcome it? I think, like, you get a picture in your head when you're a kid that there's this writer out there that wrote this book, and they live in a little lake cottage that overlooks some ducks, and every morning they go out and they type, and they're filled with confidence, and everything that they do is all about the stories and the writing, and it's not true at all. Every single writer is flawed and beat up. In fact, the more flawed and beat up we are, the more interesting our stuff probably is.
The Shining.
Yeah, absolutely. And so for me, like, the idea of struggling with doubt is always going to be part of your process, and doubt is going to make your process better, right? If I based everything on what I wrote last night, I would quit, because what I wrote last night is garbage. But I'm going to go back in again tonight and make less garbage and maybe more better, or maybe I'll go back and fix what I wrote. But doubting your ability is part of it. I really honestly feel like it's forcing your way through it, because what you realize is that you can do anything, right? It's that doubt can plague you, and that imposter syndrome will always just be sitting on the back of your head. But at the same time, you made a story, right? You got to the end, you completed something. And, going through that doubt, I think, is really, really important, and recognizing that all of us have it, and there's nothing you can do to get rid of it. So keep going.
I actually love that you picked that one, because there was another question from Lana here, which is simply how do you deal with imposter syndrome? So I think we can talk about both things in one here. And the first thing I'd say is I totally agree, and I think doubt is good. You need to tell yourself that every day, because if you don't doubt yourself, it means you think you probably don't have a lot to get better at, and that means you're not going to get better at anything, because you're not going to question what you do. So doubt is good. You need to have that doubt. You need to live with that doubt and use it to get better. It's not, don't let it overwhelm you until you're not good enough. No, you're not good enough. No one is good enough for anything that that you do in life. You're never gonna. Do you think anyone's ready to, I don't know, you get married, have kids, or whatever? We're never good enough. We're never ready. So use that doubt to make yourself better. To understand and tell yourself it's okay. It's okay to feel doubt, because we're never 100% ready for anything. So that's step one. And then, okay, but how do you know if if you're doing well, right? And what I always like to say when people talk about imposter syndrome is, get a safety net. And in writing, that means, to me, that means an editor. So I can write something and think it's garbage, and then I can write something and think I'm the most amazing writer that ever lived, and then I'll send it to my editor, and I'll get pulled back to earth, or I'll get raised, from the depths a bit, because uh, the editor isn't close to what you've written. And proximity creates a ton of problems. Proximity creates blind spots because this is a biological kind of thing that happens to your brain. You know what the story's supposed to be, so your brain fixes it. Your brain, and that's why typos slip through. By the way, your brain fixes the way you read so that you don't you just brush over the typos, and you read them like you think they're written, but they're not. uh, and an editor, they'll just tell you the way that it is, and they'll tell you what's good, what's bad, without emotion. Good editors at least should do that. And if you can understand that, and just look at it as craft and not as beautiful art that can't be changed, and something that can evolve, uh, then you'll start to understand what you do well, what you need to get better at. And I think that really helps, beat imposter syndrome a bit, because uh, you start to make it tangible. You start to understand, okay, so, and I'm not just saying like one editor, use a bunch of people you trust, create that safety net. And it's called a safety net for a reason, because it has to be people you trust. It has to be people who aren't going to be, like mean to you or tell you to stop or whatever. But it also has to be people who will be truthful with you, right? So that
Not your mom.
yeah, not your mom. So, and I mean, once you have that in place, it becomes so much easier, because you know what you do well, you know what you're not doing that well, and you know what you'll do well because of volume, because different people might say the same thing, right? Different people can tell you do well in battle scenes, for example. And then, okay, so yeah, maybe you know a thing or two about battle scenes. That doesn't mean you're the greatest battle scene writer that ever lived, but okay, maybe you have a grasp on that. So you can feel good about that. You're allowed to feel good about that and not an imposter. And then if you don't, I don't know, do descriptions that well, you'll learn. And it doesn't mean you're an imposter. So I think
And
imposter syndrome is rooted in ignorance and not knowing what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong. So that's why I always, just suggest that.
and then Jim, I want to pop one up from you from Mohan.
Okay.
Does deciding to write a book, and this is a great question, does deciding to write a book as a more serious thing affect the fun or the enjoyment aspect of writing as a hobby?
It can if you let it. uh, I mean, when it becomes a financial incentive to write, inevitable. Can I swear? um, because I feel like swearing is the best way to say this. No matter what you do, even if it's the most fun thing in the world, there's always a shit sandwich. You have to eat it.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
everything else can be fun, but there's still that shit sandwich you have to eat. And when it's an unfortunate thing, but sometimes you have to do something you don't want to do sometimes so that you can have what you want. And so in a way, yes, when you start to take it seriously, there is a little bit of play that is taken away, because when it's just for fun, there's a lot less self-doubt, because you don't have to judge yourself. No one has to judge it. You're not even going to show it for any. It's just a hobby. You're not doing it for anyone. You're doing it for you. It could be the worst thing in the world, as long as you're doing this. But once you decide that you want to show it to someone, it's not just about you anymore. It's also about them. So you can let that ruin the fun, or you can let that inform the fun and say, hey, I get to play with someone else. this is a experience that I'm sharing with someone. So yeah, it's going to be a little bit harder and it takes something away from it, but it also adds something. And it's all about reframing your mindset around it to regain the fun. So.
Sorry,
I
Thiago.
actually have a no. I actually have a really cool experience uh, relating to that, which is I played guitar since I was like, I don't know, 10 or something, and I decided to go to music university, and it just sucked the joy out of me because at the back of my mind, something that was fun for me suddenly became something that was going to be my job. I actually studied music and business at the same time, but the pressure that I put on myself to succeed with that and to absolutely have to do that out of, I don't know, a thousand reasons of I wanted to prove that I could, I wanted to do this, I don't know, doesn't matter. It puts pressure on you and it stops being fun. And I actually I dropped out of music university because I just, it wasn't fun anymore. And after I dropped out, I didn't touch my guitar for like, I don't know, 3 or 4 years. Like I did not touch it. And then my brother started playing the drums and he built a band and he was like, we need our guitars, man. You know, just come play with us. And I started playing again for fun and then it became fun again. So, I'd say just be careful with pressure, you know. Yeah, if it's serious and you're doing it as something that you want to make a living out of, great, that's awesome. But just be careful of how much pressure you're going to put on yourself because even if you want to make money with this, it's supposed to be fun. Otherwise, it loses the point. Uh, but yeah, no, I think I was done with imposter syndrome, and yeah, I had like, oh yeah, the last thing that I had to say was, you can always learn. I think people have a tendency to label themselves and think that's immutable, right? That's this. I'm a good writer. I'm a bad writer. You might be a good writer now. You might be a bad writer now. That doesn't mean you can't learn, and you can't get better at it. It's craft. It isn't talent. Talent is a very, 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 very small part of life, I'd say. Uh, and all it does is make things easier. It doesn't make things possible. So just practice, man. If you think you're not good enough, just practice.
Yeah.
Imposter syndrome will only beat you if you let it, if you give up.
Mhm. If you really need a big kick in the pants, I recommend Stephen Pressfield's The War of Art. Um, it's a fantastic book. It kind of helped me get the right mindset to actually complete things. Because basically he framed doubt and imposter syndrome in a package that he called resistance. And he just said, resistance, he kind of framed it almost like a demon on your shoulder. Resistance will tell you to stop. It will tell you, oh, don't do that. Go, watch a movie, oh, this thing you're writing right now, it's trash. It's absolute trash. You should just stop. You should stop. And resistance will annoy you more the closer you get to doing something awesome. So the closer you get to accomplishing something awesome, the louder that voice can get. And really, sometimes I talk to it. Promise I'm not crazy, but sometimes when I wake up in the morning, I'm like, oh, I need to write. And I really don't want to write right now. And then I'll say, you know what? That's resistance. No, thank you. Not today, resistance. Not today.
Not
And then I
today.
just go do it because once you realize it's something, once you place it as something else that's not you, then it becomes easier to battle it. It's a little bit of a mental trick. Some people can't trick themselves into thinking things like that. I tend to be able to manipulate myself. So if you can manipulate yourself, that's one way to do it. So
All right, Thiago, you got another one?
Yeah, that's my campaign.
Yeah. So there were a few questions, kind of in the same vein. Uh, the first one came from Miggins from Hobbit Hole Books. He asks about, how do you deal with lack of access to people in the industry to provide advice or mentorship? And also, just lack of finances and just support from people near you. A few other people chipped in, like when people say, "Oh, you're writing a book," that's nice, how cute. But don't really believe in you. So I don't know if any of you have any experiences with that or stuff to comment on that.
Well, I'll go first. Um, I guess I'll tackle the what do you tell people when I'll take that one first. And you don't have to tell anyone. You can keep it to yourself and maybe just the closest friends that you have that that will support you. I had that experience with my family when I was doing music. My mom was just not into me doing music, for whatever reasons that she had. And I understand why. But that was, and that hurt, you know what I mean? And that was really hard. She was complete 180 when I started writing. She was like, "Oh, great, you're not gonna die in a ditch somewhere, high on heroin or something, whatever she thought would happen to me." But
Moms always think you're going to die in a ditch from heroin. It's just, it doesn't matter.
writers, they're in their basements and they don't die off of heroin. Fortunately, she doesn't know some writers. But you don't have to tell anyone. And then so maybe wait to tell them after you have something, or you can kind of just ignore them. If you want to tell them, you can kind of ignore them. You can't let that stop you. You kind of have to. Anytime you do something creative, you almost have to, even though you have self-doubt, you almost have to believe in yourself to almost a little bit of a ridiculous amount to have the hubris to think somebody would read a book you would write. Like that's kind of crazy, right? Like you do have to have a little bit of confidence and a little bit of, I'm just going to do this thing. Like I think I can do it. You have to have a little bit of self-belief, even with all the doubt. As far as if you don't have finances, that's hard. But honestly, writing the book is the cheapest part. It just takes a lot of time. You might need help. And you can read a lot of books. A lot of books are pretty cheap. You can get a few books. That's a small investment to get started on learning the craft. A few books on marketing, a few books on, editing yourself. You're not going to want to release it, self-edit it, probably, unless you're a very special person. There are a couple people, but it's not you.
It's not you.
There are a couple people who could do that, but it's not you. I promise it's not you. So, editing is one of those things that you're kind of not going to get around. There are options. There's crowdfunding. There's begging, which are different to some people. But you're gonna have to figure out how to make it happen. And one of the people that I look up to for, in my writing circles, she often says, there's almost always a way. You just gotta really want it. And she isn't wrong in a lot of different ways, unless you are really out on the street. That's a different situation. And then maybe your priority shouldn't be writing a book yet. But
Jim's got all the good quotes.
But yeah, and when I say the other thing is investing in going to like a writing conference with other writers is a good investment, provided you go there with the intent of being a real person and you're just gonna meet some people and make some friends and connect with them, over the long term. That really helps. I've done a couple masterminds as well. That can be very expensive, but every single time I've done it, I've made the money back within a couple months because of the connections that I made. Because I have a skill, they need a skill. Hey, do you want me to do that for you? And I do the thing for them. I make the money back easily. I don't recommend that for everybody, but finding there's probably a writers conference in your area. Especially if you live in Europe, if you live in America, there's probably one relatively close by. And
What
go
about Brazil,
there.
Jim?
What's that? Well, I don't know anything about Brazil, unfortunately. I know there's a forest there or something where we keep all of our stuff that we order. But yeah, I would definitely recommend it. There's 20 books to 50K is the big one in America right now. I think it's in Vegas. There's a lot of people there, so it could be overwhelming, but that's one thing to do. I know it costs money. I know it does. But if you really need that community, that investment could be worth it to you. If you can't do it, you can't do it, and you just find different ways. Maybe connect with people on Twitter, but I find that meeting people in person goes way further, way faster than meeting someone online. So that's what I got.
What exactly is the original question?
Yeah, I don't know.
It's actually split into three parts, but it's how to deal with lack of access to people in the industry. I think that's
Keep
the
reaching
main one.
out and reaching out and reaching out. If you're looking for editors, or if you're looking for agents, or if you're looking for publishers, there's that list there. Go out to them. Expect all of them to be rejections. One of them might come through. Second question?
And then the second part is lack of finances and just general support from people close to you.
Lack of finances, I think, is an excuse. I think Cahill's a great example, right? He put together the book, he bought a cover for $100 and he published it, done, right? That was it. And, the writing did the job, right? And so you can publish an ebook right now, right? That you can go online, go on to Kindlepreneur or Dave Gaugan or whoever you like and find that information about how the mechanics of how to get it done right now. And if you got $100, you can publish an ebook, right? That's all you need. And so, I put that in the bucket of excuses. I feel like it's just those things that you think are going to stand in your way. So you create these obstacles for yourself, but you can always do a but if. But what if, all these things are going to stand in your way. Screw it. Write the book, get it done. Go out with it. It's there's nothing to it but to do it, and doing it is the key thing. Sorry, I'm very blunt with these things. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean,
the chat is for this. So
yeah. Honestly, writing a book is provided you're going to publish and you want to. Let's say you want to make a career out of it. You're starting a business. You have to take risks, and part of your risk taking is I need to invest in this product. It's not just your special painting. It's a product. And if you don't invest in it, you will not see a return. You've got to put in the investment. Some of that is time-based investment. If you are the one who's narrating your own audiobook, if you're the one who's, doing your own cover art, which is also something you should probably not do, unless you are a professional cover artist designer. If you do that, then yeah, fine, do your own book cover design. But it's one of those things where would you rather save up money over time and pay someone who knows what they're doing, or spend hundreds of hours learning how to do a thing, instead of writing that next book? So you got to make that decision. And yeah, I mean, it's usually an excuse, just like Andy's saying. You
Yeah,
gotta,
I
yeah,
mean,
risk.
there are certain things that I highly recommend you do before publishing, like getting an editor, a third party editor. Um,
If you're going to
and you're
spend
gonna need
money
a
on one thing,
yeah,
that's
it's
it,
an editor. That's it.
right?
That's it. And okay, you might not have, a ton of money to spend on anything right now, but then just try and save up, maybe, you know, create a plan is what I'm saying. Uh, and I think it goes in line with what you guys are saying, which is if you put that as an obstacle and say, I can't do it because of this, then you're not going to do it. But for everything in life, if you say, okay, I can't do it right now because I have this problem, how do I solve this problem? Then suddenly you have a plan and you have a path that you can follow to solve the problem. You're not putting an obstacle, you're putting an objective. The problem becomes an objective. It becomes something you need to solve instead of something that's holding you back. So I think it's a question of mindset when you're talking about that, right? And it's either money or time, right? So as you guys said, you can spend a ton of time just trying to uh, learn how to do covers or learning Photoshop basics. I put out a few AI generated covers that I did as placeholders for my next books. That those aren't going to be the covers for my books, but I wouldn't be mad if they were, to be
Right.
honest. So, and I spent nothing on them. So, uh, there are ways to go about it. It's just I think the question you need to ask yourself is how do I solve this problem, and not, oh, why can't I do it? I'm so unfortunate. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's about problem solving to me.
What's the next question?
Okay, so sorry, I got distracted by the chat. Bo and Marilyn, they're going at it again.
Yeah, guys,
Uh,
distracted.
so okay, so we have I think two more that are a little more specific. Twainy asks, who even has time to write a book? And that's I think we talked about time a
Mhm.
lot. Um, but then she asks, how do you insert humor into dark stories successfully? And what kind of humor works best? That's a
What a
hard one.
question!
What kind of humor works best? That's almost asking like which bear is best. I don't know the humor you're best at. I don't know.
So here's my opinion on it.
Uh-huh.
I generally avoid actively trying to be funny because humor is subjective, and if you try too hard, it shows. And it's safer to not be funny, or to maybe be funny if someone picks up on your sense of humor and shares your sense of humor. So I end up being a little snarky sometimes with a few characters. And if people pick up on that and chuckle, that's fine. Uh, but to actively insert humor, like I don't know, Joe Abercrombie that writes grimdark, but then he puts stuff that people laugh out loud in his books. Uh, that's maybe something you probably need to study. My number one suggestion every time I don't know about something is learn it. So research how do people how do stand-up comedians become stand-up comedians or whatever, and just try to understand. There probably isn't one answer, but maybe you can create an average of what people find funny and then try to follow that line or something. I don't know.
Well, the other thing too is that I mean they're asking in the context of something dark,
Mhm.
which is great. If there's any place where humor is going to work, it's when the situation is dark. Either it's going to be gallows humor, which usually works because it's acerbic and negative and kind of sums up how you're feeling, or it's a surprise, right? There's a play called Steel Magnolias, and they made a movie out of it. And there's this one scene where she's breaking down, she's crying, and everything is going wrong, and she's like, "Oh!" and the audience is with her totally, right? You are in her shoes, you are feeling every negative emotion that she's ever felt in her life. And she's like, I want to hit something. And they grab the main character that everybody hates and they go, here, hit her. And the whole audience busts out laughing, which is great drama because you have this moment where you brought the audience with you into this really dark place and then broke the tension, which gives them the permission to laugh, and they love it. So including humor in dark stuff is a great way to break the tension in the scene and kind of pay off everything that you just did. You don't just take it to the darkest moment and leave them there. Take them to the darkest moment and then break it. Go somewhere else, right? That's the stuff that's going to drive home that darkness that you're looking at.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think I saw something about humor, which is, what makes things funny is mainly it being unexpected and contrast, right?
Mhm.
So that's why it's called a punchline, because you don't expect the punch.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's as far as I go in humor, to be honest. I'm kind of I'm kind of scared of it. I think it's hard. I don't think I'm particularly funny, and I am too addicted to dad jokes, so it wouldn't work. I wouldn't be able to control myself.
I I also don't consider myself to be very funny. Um, when humor occurs in my novels, it kind of organically comes from the conversations my characters are having. Like it's usually not something that is slapsticky or anything. It's usually something because somebody says something clever and it's kind of like, huh. It's not very, very funny. It's just kind of like, oh, that was kind of funny. Um, but the only time I feel like I can be funny is when I make humor the primary genre. Then all the wheels start turning completely for humor. And every scene, like every few lines, has to have something funny about it. And I can start constructing the narrative that way. But trying to put it in to something that where it doesn't feel organic to the conversation or the situation is very difficult for me. So I'm not really the best person to ask about that, but I will give Joe a call and I will let him know what he says.
I actually read a snippet from Richard Swan. I think it was the Justice of Kings. A guy approaches another person on a horse, and the person doesn't hear him very well, and they say, "Speak up, you sound a little dot 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 hoarse." I think that's actually published in a book, and if that is, he's my hero because that's awesome. Uh, so you guys have anything more on that one, or do you want me to skip? I have two more that we can tackle here. So Andrew Meredith recently picked as a SPFBO semifinalist, by the way, uh, asked, let's hear about equipment, he says. Uh, I think he was talking about YouTube videos because you both of you have YouTube channels. Yeah. So, how much scripting goes into it, and I don't know, just a general overview of equipment, I guess. If you want to branch into writing software or whatever, I think that maybe could be helpful as well. Yeah.
Me? I'm not even the film expert. For YouTube, I I mean, I don't have a lot of YouTube content, so I feel like I'm not the best guy to ask about this. I mean, I just got started, so but I'm using a webcam right now, and that's what I use for my YouTube videos. Just a webcam. It's 1080p. It's not even 4K. My phone takes better video. But it was the simplest solution for what I'm trying to do because I use my phone to look at my notes. That and also was easier to connect it directly to my computer, which is recording it, and also use a mic so that I can sync it all up very easily. And it was more difficult to do that with my phone. So I was like, no, I'm just going to use a webcam. And I got the webcam for free from a friend who had too many webcams I guess. So and that's a thing, if you have a friend who has too many webcams, ask them for a webcam. So yeah, I kind of just started with what I had. I've done music a lot, so I had a microphone, and I use that. So that's something you might have to invest in. But if you don't have it, then just start simple, and then work your way up if you find that you actually enjoy it. I haven't really invested in anything because I need to make sure it's something I really want to do a lot more of before I, spend a ton of money on trying that. My lighting, I actually have 2 box lights in my room that I use. And I had those previously because I was doing photography for my book so that I could use it and, get good lighting for my book and for different subjects, also merch that I was doing and stuff like that. So I had those around for that specific purpose. Lighting can be tricky. To me, YouTube is lighting and sound. If your lighting, I mean, framing is also important, but like if your lighting is awful, it's gonna be really bad because nobody's gonna want to watch it. If your sound is really bad, I think that's even worse because you can't even listen to it. So it just becomes I don't want any part of it. So yeah, getting sound is big, and I even have some work to do on that. Like my sound isn't perfect. I haven't put up any sound treatment or anything, and I think I found a little bit of a hack through a plugin that I'm going to use to help reduce some of my echo that I'm going to use on my next video, which I'll see how that works out. But anyway, for writing equipment, I have a computer, I guess. I have a MacBook. You don't need a MacBook. Get a really cheap Chromebook. You can write on a typewriter. I mean, writing equipment is very simple. I don't really see that. Google Docs, on your phone if you want to. You can write almost anywhere in any situation. You can dictate. In fact, it's a lot faster to write by dictation. I don't do it because it messes with my head, but everyone who does it says, yeah, it messed with my head too. But you just have to get used to it, and it becomes easier and easier. So that might be a thing, especially if you have problems with typing and everything. So, but I use Google Docs. I use World Anvil to store my world notes. And other than that, I use Vellum to help with compiling my book files. That program is brilliantly simple, but it only works on Mac. There is a new one out called Atticus, and it's like an all-in-one writing and compiling software. It's reasonably affordable, but you don't even have to do that. There are free tools to compile your ebooks all over the web, and paperback. You can find tools. There are tools out there for free. All you just need is something to type on. And word processor, basically, which you can find for free as well.
I'm going to skip most of my answer because I think Jim answered it as well as I could have. It's this, right? And that's what you need to write. None of the rest of it matters. They're tools and organizational things, but as long as you've got a clickety-clack, you can put together a story. And, it's the same thing with YouTube. If you've got, a 720p camera with a microphone in it, you're ready to go, right? My concern is that, once again, you're letting these things stand in your way. I can't do a YouTube channel until, I need to have this kind of microphone. I need to have this kind of lighting. No, you need content. You need stuff. You need to do it. Is the first YouTube video you're going to make going to be any good? No, it doesn't matter. Do another one. If it's something that you're committed to doing, just keep doing it. Like with this stupid thing, I don't care about my YouTube channel. I just like talking to authors, right? So that's what it's for. It's just like, okay, there's a place for the interviews where I can go back and see what they said. None of this stuff should stop you from doing what you want to do. Don't create your own obstacles. Get it out of the way. You've got a clickety-clack, you got a camera, you got whatever you need. use that until you're ready for the next thing. But great tools are not going to make you a better writer. They're not going to make you a better YouTube broadcaster, right? You need to put in the time to develop those skills, and you might as well do it with the equipment that you've got, because otherwise you're going to buy a whole bunch of stuff and you're still not going to know what you're doing.
The same thing happened to me when I was doing audio engineering for musicians. It didn't matter how much gear I had or how many plugins I had or how many fancy stuff, which wasn't a whole lot, but buying something new never made me better.
Right.
It was practice that made me better. And I saw that over and over again in audio engineering. You would see engineer, they would do these, I don't think they're stunts really, but they would be like, oh, like master this track with this, with stock plugins. And they would do it and it would sound amazing. And it wasn't because their tools were that good. It's because it's what's up here. It's what you do with what you have that makes you great. So.
Yeah, I think I fell into YouTube, rabbit hole a few months back, which was a professional. I was actually, researching composition to put covers together, but it was a professional kind of I forgot the name, a cameraman versus a beginner, just movie kind of student, and they gave super professional equipment to the beginner and they gave beginner equipment to the professional, and then they compared both shots, and the professional shot was still better. So yeah. It's really cool. I'll try and find the video, share with you guys.
All right, we've got one more question.
Yeah. The last one was from Tesla. Tips for writing a good blurb.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Hire someone.
I'm not kidding. The best thing I ever did was put it up on the Oasis Discord and said, this is my blurb. What do you think? And everybody was like, oh, it's good. I'm like, no, I don't want it's good. I want you to tell me what's wrong with it. So they were like, oh, well, okay, it's kind of a little bit of this, and I'm not exactly sure about this. So I rewrote it, put it back up there again. Oh, okay, well, I'm less interested now, and then this, and this, and you get it in front of 10 people a couple of different times, because there's a formula for what needs to be in there. You need a hook, an action, you need a little bit of a ticking clock, you need some stakes, you need a character that maybe sounds interesting. All that stuff needs to be in there. And there are enough professionals in whatever Discord you're a part of. If you're watching this dumb thing, you're a part of some Discord that has some pros in there. Get it up in front of them. Say, here's 150, what is it, 150 words? 150 words. There's 150 characters. I can't remember. It's got to be short. And so put that together. Let that be your limit and work within that box. And then when you're done, get it in front of people and actually ask them to critique it and tell you what's wrong with it. Don't let them be nice to you. Because getting punched in the face enough to where, oh, now it's good, right? That's a really critical thing. So knowing that you're not going to write it once, knowing that you're going to write it 15 times and break its bones several times getting there, I think is important. But your description is one of the most important things that people have. It's your cover and your description, right? That's what people are going to look at. So those two things need to be quality. They don't need to be perfect. You don't need to, wait forever for them to be done. You can buy $100 cover and you can write a description and get that beaten up a couple of times until it's good enough to print. But get it in front of some people, get it in front of one of these Discords and say, guys, tear me apart.
Yeah, and I just add to that, don't be emotional about it. Have people actually tear it apart and write down your mistakes. Just write down what you're fixing. It's important. You should learn from your mistakes, but the way that you learn from your mistakes is by actually consciously knowing what your mistakes were, so that you don't repeat them. So
yeah, if you're waiting, if you want people to tell you you're good, stop. Right? What you need are people around you to tell you where you got it wrong. They can praise you for the things that you did right, but you're going to benefit from people going, nope, that's not good enough. No, this doesn't make sense. Well, I don't know what that is. That didn't make me feel the way you wanted me to feel. That's what you need, because 80% of what you're doing is probably right, but that 20%, that's not right, you need a truth teller to let you know what that is.
Yep, that's it.
Yeah, I don't really have much to add to that. Oh, well, except maybe go on Amazon and read some good books and model your book description after that, or at least look at the structure of a good one. And by good, you'll probably know if it's good if you think it's good, A. B, if the book is selling well. Because if a book description is poor, it might not sell well, with the exception of it being a mega huge author, because they could probably put anything there and it would still sell. So don't use Brandon Sanderson as an example. Don't use George R. R. Martin. Don't use, Stephen King. Don't use them.
Nobody whose name will sell the book.
Right.
Don't use those.
Right. Use someone who you don't know, or you know is very small relative to big names that aren't famous, and look at they've been in the top 100 on Amazon for the last month. Maybe they have a good description. Read it and see if it's good. And if it's good, see what you can learn from it.
Yeah. So those were the questions that we had. Does anyone in the chat besides Bo have a question?
Yeah. I don't know. There were some in the chat. I don't know if Thiago, you answered them, because I can't even type in the chat. I don't even know how to do that.
Now, I normally just open another tab with the actual YouTube
Oh,
stream.
that's smart.
Wow, I'm scrolling backwards, and anything with a question mark at the end of it is directed to other people in the chat.
Okay. That works.
So I'm honestly kidding. You all are open to ask questions, even Bo. Bo wanted to know who the Kim Possible ringtone was.
That's me.
Yeah. See, I told you guys it wasn't me.
Sorry, I probably should have muted that. I didn't think I'd get as many notifications as I did. And it's all for stupid stuff. It's not even important.
And erudite adventure, it is pronounced Chi-a-go, like Chi-a-pet. Same thing.
Yeah. A lot of people just say Thiago, which is fine as well, but in Portuguese it's Thiago, if you want to say it in Portuguese. So,
my next book is coming out next month. So I have a novella coming out next month. It is book 1.5 in the series. You can grab it. In fact, it's up for pre-order right now if you want to grab it. So, grab it.
Nice. All right. Are we ready to wrap it up?
yeah.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Do you guys have any short and pithy last pieces of advice that you'd like to give out?
Yeah.
Don't let people tell you. Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I was just going to say, try to make something every day. You don't have to finish it, but build something every day, a little piece of it, if you have to. Just don't stop making stuff.
Yeah, for me, I hear far too much that people saying they don't do something because they don't have talent to do it. So I just want to end this by saying talent is not a prerequisite for anything in life. You can do whatever with hard work. So
yeah, you really can. And I want to close out with one piece of advice that has really helped me. I have a big window in front of me when I write, and I write on it with chalk markers like you do on the back of a car at a wedding. And one of the pieces of advice that I got about when you're suffering with self-doubt and whether or not you're good enough or whether or not you should keep going, I just wrote 3 words on the window. And if you look at that every day, you're going to realize that it's true. And once you realize that's true, there's nothing that's going to be able to stop you. So put that up somewhere where you can see it. Put it on your bathroom mirror so you see it every morning when you wake up. Because once you get over that self-doubt, once you realize it's there, it's in the passenger seat, and it answers to you, you can accomplish anything you want to creatively. So
That's awesome.
I think that's probably a decent place to end. Thank you all so much for joining us. Appreciate you. Everybody wave goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you. See you guys.